we were just getting into kind of your story and the motivation behind stepping away from birthing inside of the medical birthing system, if you want to call it. Tell me a little bit more about your thought process there, and tell me a little bit more about what you think the medical birthing complex gets wrong about birthing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So first of all, I think they get wrong the fact that they don't believe in birth. The medical industrial complex just does not believe in women and their bodies and the power that women have within their bodies. I've never once seen a birth in the hospital system where the doctors weren't trying to save, and I put that in quotations, they weren't trying to save the woman from something that they already created. So I think that's the biggest thing, is they just don't believe in birth. They think birth is a pathology and that women need to be saved. And I wrote this on one of my Instagram posts, like, I did not fear birth at all. In fact, like, I looked forward to it. I did not want somebody to come and save me. But going back to why I chose to birth outside the system is, I very much, probably similar to a lot of people that are listening, I grew up very standard American, middle-class American. You're laughing now. And I had a near-death experience when I was in 4th grade due to asthma, and I was in the intensive care unit. And since that, I started stepping further and further away from the medical system. And I think that was like one of my big forks in the road, choice points. And, so I had written off childbirth because I assumed it happened in the hospital. But fast forward, when I became a doula, after, a few clients had talked me into it, attending their births, I realized I was awakened. I had unlearned things. And I was like, oh my gosh, you can give birth outside of the hospital. It could be at a birth center. It could be at your home. Wow, this is cool. And so that's when my wheels were turning. And then I was like, okay, I can have a family, because I had written that off. I was like, okay, if having a family meant birthing in the hospital, then I don't know about that. Just because I had such a negative experience in the hospital and with medicine, pharmaceuticals growing up. I was, on antibiotics from a very young age, steroid inhaler due to asthma, allergies. But my parents, they did the best they could with what they had, So that was my unlearning, was actually observing birth and being a part of women's births outside of the hospital system. And so I knew from basically that moment on, it was around 2011 when I became a doula, that I wanted to have a family and I wanted to birth at home. And so that started me down the rabbit hole, the rabbit hole. And
the rest, as they say, is history, or unfolding history in the next generations, which is so beautiful. And I think you hit a few points that my wife and I have been on this journey too, as many other women that have gone on this same journey. It's funny, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely.
And you were saying, like, I'd written this off to its end conclusion. It is not for me because it has to happen in the hospital. I remember telling some of my friends what we were planning for birth, which was wild, free, at home. And some of them said, isn't that illegal? Can you do that?
Yeah, totally. Like, when you start to explore the free birth route, I've had, like, it's funny, people are like, did you get permission for that? That's basically what they're asking.
Yeah, right.
And it's like,
from who?
It's my body. It's my baby. It's my birth experience. It's wild. The other thing I wanted to say was the United States has a pretty terrible maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rate. Like, we are one of the worst for industrialized countries. And when you actually start to educate yourself and look at the numbers and look at the facts of what's going on in childbirth in America, it's terrible at best. And when I looked at the numbers, I was like, oh, why would I repeat the same thing? Like, it's that quote, like, why do you keep repeating the same thing and expect a different result? It's like, we're sicker, women are dying, children are dying. So why would I go inside a system or engage in those processes that really aren't doing any good.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, that gave me the data, I guess, to engage outside the system.
Yeah, you definitely need something that pushes you in that direction.
Yeah.
I think stories are really powerful, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
we were talking about the Free Birth Society.
Yeah.
Seeing dozens, if not hundreds of stories of women doing it this way eventually will cause you to go, oh, why not me?
Yes.
Or looking at a data
Yes.
point, like you said, terrible outcomes for children's health, mortality, but the most money spent than any other developed country in the world. So how do you
98 billion
square
a
that
year.
circle? It
Like,
doesn't make sense, right? If it was
zero.
working,
Zero.
that doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
It's unbelievable. And like you nailed it, like our children are sick. The autism rate keeps going up, obesity, allergies, asthma, ADHD, anything, autoimmune issues. So why are we not looking at, how children are brought into this world?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously we've looked at gut health. We've looked at, environmental. So I keep going back. And the whole, basically from preconception, pregnancy, and the first year of a child's life, a human's life, there's the most influence, exponential neurodevelopment that's happening. And there's a guy by the name of Michel Odent, and I don't know if you came across his research when y'all were
No.
digging in, but he's a French OB. He's like in his 90s now.
Wow.
Straight up G. Like he can recite every research thing he's ever done. And I had the opportunity to be in a room probably about this big with him and probably 20 other birth workers in Los Angeles and just ask him questions. But he started something called the Primal Research Database, and he's basically researched this known as the critical period in humans, where this period has the most profound effect on our health later on in life. So why are we still doing the same dumb shit, like, for lack of a better word?
No, for real.
Hopefully you can cuss on this podcast because I just
can.
did. Sorry, Vera. But it's like that critical period needs to be investigated, and nobody else really was researching it besides him and then the chiropractic world. So that's kind of where
The worlds collided.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And we were talking off air, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. My wife had a C-section the first time and then a free pregnancy and wild birth the second time. So the most kind of
Full
most
spectrum.
opposite, full spectrum. And just even thinking energetically and the experience of how Jai, my firstborn, came into the world, and how Indy, my second, came in, the energy, who was around, the bright lights, the sterile hands, the clean the baby as soon as possible, the cord clamping, everything, versus this much slower, natural, calm, relaxed,
Peaceful.
loving, peaceful, blissful, powerful, on and on and on you go. What was that experience like for you? Because I know it changed you, because I know it changed my wife, and I know that if women get to have that birthright and they reclaim it, it's transformative. I'm curious on your story.
I think, well, first of all, I truly believe that any woman can have the birth she desires. And I should say, and it starts with lifestyle practices even before conception. Starts with digging in the personal development cobwebs, going through all of that stuff. And I think starting BirthFit was literally my journey, my 10-year preconception journey to get to this space. Because like we were talking about, I had such a awesome birth. Like, it was not painful, it was blissful.
Wow.
People were like, wait, what? You birthed at home and it wasn't painful? No, I would do it again in a heartbeat. And it was like a drug. So I love to say, if I wasn't 40, I would have 10 more. Like, it was the best drug I've ever had. But I truly believe that birth is not designed to be painful. It's designed, like you just said, it's children, humans are supposed to come into this world peaceful, in a loving environment, a caring environment, not one that's abusive. And I really think the hospital setting is abusive. And, that might freak some people out, trigger some people. But like you said, the shiny objects, the the lights, the sterile environment, picking up the baby, moving the baby without the baby's permission, not even acknowledging that baby is a human being. It's just, they just treat it as an object. And then there's protocols and processes in the hospital where it's like, okay, let's give them the eye ointment. Let's do the injections. Let's do the poisons, all that stuff. And without a thought of how does that baby feel in that moment?